this picture of my mom and dad at my cousin's wedding. They looked really happy here. I'm reminded of how gracious and kind she was. Always willing to jump in, help anyone, and make things happen.
We had such a good relationship that you don't always expect to come from your mother-in-law, but she was truly one of my best friends.
The last time that I saw my mom was on the Sunday, and we met at a church service. And I remember how happy my mom seemed that we were all there together as a family.
I received the call about 1 o'clock in the morning. We had a missing woman, a realtor, that was showing a house.
When I heard that she had disappeared and wasn't around, immediately I was concerned.
The last text that came through was not her. She was not someone that stayed out late. We knew that that wasn't her on the other end of the text message.
Over the weekend, crews and volunteers searched for Carter, with authorities asking landowners to search their property.
Having no idea if she was in pain or if she was out and exposed to the weather, it was crippling and it was torture.
Beverly was a true victim. She was preyed on. I did promise Beverly's husband that I would find her, but it's not the way that I wanted to.
I don't remember saying goodbye, what I wouldn't give for just one more time to give my mom a hug. But I never saw her again. My mom and dad met each other at a very young age. My dad was 19 years old. My mom was 16. And they suddenly found themselves with an unplanned pregnancy. And that was me. I was fortunate when I was growing up because my mom was at home with me. And so I had a wonderful childhood. I had lots of time with her. And in some respects, we kind of grew up together. My parents had 3 sons. I'm the oldest of 3 boys. My brothers, Chris and Chad, and we're all spaced about 3.5 years apart. Although she was very sweet and short in stature, she could get all 3 of us boys in line very quickly.
Carl's relationship with his mom they were very close. They probably talked 2, if not more times a day. I mean, he called her for advice. He called her to tell her something funny. He called her just to see how she was doing or how her day was. They were probably the closest I've seen a mother-son be.
Hey, you. I just got home and got this beautiful present in the mail. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love it. Love it, love it. You're so sweet. I love you very much. Thanks, bye.
Tragically, we lost my middle brother, Chris, in an automobile accident in 2003. My mom really struggled with the grief of the loss of my brother. Understandably, she wanted change. She needed something different. And she had always had the interest in homes and home design. So for her, it was a very natural fit to go into this completely new career path. She just really threw herself into the real estate profession.
If there was an award to be won, Beverly won it. I think the top award is Diamond, and I'm fairly certain she won that numerous times.
Beverly was my best friend. When I moved to the North Little Rock office, we just started being buds, it was just automatic. It wasn't anything we had to work on. As a professional, she was just top notch. In 2012, we went and did our educator's license so that we could teach real estate. In 2014, Little Rock was growing, lots of construction, lots of new houses being built. And so we were very active working with buyers and sellers. So we were really, really busy that year.
Little Rock, even though it's the capital city of our state, it still very much has a small town feel. It's a tight community. You can't go anywhere almost without, someone knowing you.
It's a very safe community. You don't hear much about like domestic crimes or home break-ins or, it's not typically something that happens very often here.
It's a great place to raise a family. And of course, my mom working in real estate, she was a part of so much of that excitement and people pursuing the American dream of moving and buying a home and joining, this vibrant community. Thursday, September 25th. I remember it being an absolutely beautiful day. I went for a run in my neighborhood and running past 2 homes that my mom had listed for sale, just thinking that I needed to just my mom called my dad and told him that she would be showing a property to a couple from out of town, a couple that she had talked to him about prior to even that day.
Nothing was out of the ordinary. I got home probably around 6. Around 8 o'clock, Carl and I got into bed to turn on TV and watch a show or something. Around 8:30, my father-in-law called Carl, which is not normal. They didn't talk on the phone often. So there was a little concern. Carl answered the phone and just hey, Dad, what's going on?
He explained that he had been trying to call and to text my mom and she wasn't replying. And he just kept going on about this being weird and that he was worried about her. And he really wasn't letting it go.
I didn't think anything else of it because I really did think, I guarantee you she is at a house, sitting at a kitchen table, signing a contract. Her phone is probably in her car. But when he called back, that's when I think it shifted a little bit.
I told my dad that I would go to her office, and I encouraged my dad to go to the house that she would be showing that afternoon, and that we would find her at one of those places. Upon arriving to my mom's real estate office, it was immediately evident that no one was there. The building was just completely dark, not a single light on, and the parking lot, it was just empty.
I remember at that moment, something felt wrong. I could just feel it.
And as we're sitting there, my dad calls me and he said that he had arrived at that house on Old River Drive and that my mom's car was parked in front of it and the front door was open, but that my mom was gone. I told my dad that we needed to contact law enforcement, and so we made the call to report my mom missing and started making my way out to that home to be with my dad.
Once the police arrived, everyone was looking around the property. A few of the sheriff's deputies started going door to door to see if anybody had any information.
The later it got, the more concerned I became, because even with all of the ideas that we had come up with for reasons why we might not be hearing from her, they just didn't fly anymore. And we really had to begin facing the fact that something truly may have happened to her.
I enjoy helping people. Being a homicide detective, you get closure for people. I was actually off on call when I found out about Beverly. Initially, I was just told that she went to show a house and the husband found her vehicle and was not able to find her. When I went inside the house, you could tell that the house had been vacant. There was a lot of dust, and you could tell there were disturbances in that dust where somebody had walked. Outside of the house, I saw tire tracks that looked like they'd backed all the way to the front door. I noticed that her car was locked, but her purse was inside. When I realized the purse was in Beverly's car, it's about the same time that a cell phone text came through from Beverly's phone.
I just remember being out there huddled and watching our phones. And then suddenly, just after midnight, my dad begins just yelling out to all of us, Beverly has texted me back. And we all just start running toward his truck.
And in that moment, it was so like, okay, there she is. You know, she's fine. And it is crazy how you can go from it is fine to it is not fine. Right after that, the next message came in. It said, sorry, phone dead. And we were like, okay, that's okay. That makes sense. I mean, that's fine.
Not long after the second text, we received a third text from my mom. It was letting my dad know that she was out drinking with friends. And knowing my mom, knowing that her favorite beverage was chocolate milk, not alcohol, we went from relief to just complete horror, because we knew just with those few words that my mom had been taken and that she was in a very dangerous situation.
At that point, I felt that Beverly had been kidnapped.
When I got the phone call at about 2:00 that morning from the police department, it scared me to death because I knew that Beverly would be at home. There was no question that something had happened to her.
We decided to ping the cell phone, since the cell phone was turned on, and send in messages, try to figure out a GPS location of that phone. When the cell phone pings come in, it gives us a GPS coordinate. So I pull that up and I go to those locations and I look for any kind of evidence that may lead me to Beverly. Old River Drive in Scott is a very remote area. It's a lot of farmland out here. There's not a high crime volume. The fact that Beverly's phone was moving around and we had 3 different pings showed me that that phone was actually moving. So we had a direction of travel that her phone was moving in. We got the pings where the house is at on Old River. We got a ping at Faulkner and Interstate 440. We got a phone ping at Dixon Road, and that phone ping was about 20-minute ping. So that phone stayed there in one spot for about 20 minutes. I kept thinking, I'm going to get there and she's going to be sitting there waiting for somebody to pick her up. But I didn't find anything that I felt was involved in the crime. After this, we received 0 further pings. When that happens, we know that more than likely the SIM card's been removed. It puts a freeze on it because we can't track the phone anymore. I knew that someone had turned her phone off. While I was looking into the pings, one of the neighbors across the street reported seeing a small black car backed up to the driveway with a white male standing beside the car. She didn't think anything of it. Well, that's the last person that we could put Beverly with, so that was significant. That was a first lead that we had. That first night that I was involved, I did realize that Beverly was in serious danger. I think that she was somewhere against her will.
That night, when the detectives returned back to the scene and advised that they weren't able to track or find the phone, they asked that we go home and rest and start the search again at daylight. I remember just feeling so much guilt for leaving that spot, thinking that wherever she may be, that if she were to come back to the spot where she had been taken, that we wouldn't be there.
It was a very quiet ride home. We laid in bed and I just started crying, and then he started crying. I think the last time I looked at the clock, it may have been like 3:30 in the morning. And obviously we fell asleep just from exhaustion, but also maybe hopeful we'd wake up and this was all not real.
The next night, as we went past the 24-hour time frame, we knew the importance about finding her within that span of time.
The longer somebody is missing, the more likely it is that they will not be found alive. So the police were extremely concerned. The chances they would find her in a safe state were decreasing by the minute.
I can remember every minute of those 5 days. The police department said that they would set up a search party. It was very well organized. The community was involved, churches were involved. It was really a lot of people. Safety was always at the foremost for Beverly. I knew from the beginning that something bad had happened. I did not want to think that it was the end of Beverly. She would not have left her husband or family without telling them what she was doing.
Speaking with her family, I did feel like Beverly was a safety conscious person. She seemed to be very smart. She had shown thousands of houses and have never had an issue before.
There had to be some other explanation for why. Her car was there, but she wasn't there. We were all trying to come up with scenarios. I mean, honestly, we were even like, maybe she left. Maybe she has a boyfriend. Maybe they've run off together. Maybe they're on a plane somewhere. You know, like we were going far trying to find something that would make more sense than something bad had happened.
Every time she went to a showing, Beverly would convey to her husband who she was going to show the house to. She kept a list of it. She made sure she left her purse in her car. She tried to take affirmative steps to protect herself, and she thought that that was more than enough to keep her safe.
The investigators found a notebook in my mom's car. And in this book, my mom would put in details, around names and phone numbers, or types of properties that people were interested in seeing, just anything and everything that she wanted to, remember about who she was working with at that time.
The police looked in Beverly's notebook and saw that the most recent entry was for a couple that essentially didn't exist. They were fake names and numbers. Why would prospective buyers give a fake name and number if they were intending to actually buy this house?
We looked into the details of the notebook that Beverly had in her vehicle. We had the address of the Old River Road, and underneath that was an email address and then a telephone number. The phone number we found out was a fake and figured out that it was a text app that was downloaded. You have to have a real number in that application, so we were able to send a search warrant and find out who it actually was registered to. The real phone number that the fake number was created from was owned by Crystal Lowry. Crystal Lowry's husband was Aaron Lewis.
When police had found out the last people that Beverly was with were Crystal and Aaron Lewis, they became very concerned. While Crystal did not have any criminal record, Aaron Lewis had an extensive criminal history, including for violent offenses.
When we got Aaron's physical description, it matched the description that the neighbor saw of the white male standing beside the small black car at the house on River Road. Crystal Lowry and Aaron Lewis lived in Sherwood, which is about 10 to 15 miles from the scene where Beverly was kidnapped. So we sent vehicles and marked units to that area to get an eye on the house. When we were going over to put surveillance on the house, they actually saw Aaron Lewis walk out of the door. He saw them and he fled.
They took off on a car chase and he was driving so erratically, he actually got into an accident, crashing his vehicle and sustained injuries himself.
Aaron suffered a cut on his head and a broken nose, and he was taken to the hospital by ambulance. When we ran the search warrant on Aaron Lewis's vehicle, we were able to find duct tape, we found a cell phone, and we found hair fibers. We had an officer that went to the hospital when Aaron Lewis went for a CT scan. He flees the hospital. There's no reason for Aaron to run from the hospital unless he's committed a crime. He's trying to get away. I wrote a search warrant for Crystal Lowry and Aaron Lewis's house. When we executed the search, we were able to locate Beverly's cell phone with the missing SIM card. At that point, I knew that Aaron Lewis was involved with the kidnapping of Beverly Carter. We immediately put out a BOLO for Aaron Lewis.
A BOLO is a be on the lookout for. It's a notification of other law enforcement agencies and the community that they are looking for somebody because they feel either the public is in imminent danger or this person could escape very serious criminal charges.
We included a photograph of him from the car crash. We stated that we were looking for him as a person of interest in the kidnapping of Beverly Carter and asked that anyone having information contact us.
Hey, they're looking for a guy here that was involved in the realtor being kidnapped. And this guy looks like him. And he is nervous, and he's out here at a bus stop.
Okay, but don't tip him off or anything. We'll get someone out there.
When officers arrived, Aaron fled on foot into an apartment complex and then jumped off the second-story floor right into the bottom of the feet of an officer standing there, so they took him into custody.
My mom had been missing for 4 days, and I was with my dad at his house, and we got the call from the investigators to let us know that Aaron Lewis had been taken into custody.
The family had never heard of Aaron Lewis before. They were in hopes that Beverly would be found alive and that we were on the right track to find her.
There was a part of me that was relieved because I felt like he would do the right thing and tell us where my mom was.
Where is she? Who? I'm asking you a question. Did you do anything?
No, did you?
Why did they have you arrested?
I have no idea. They still haven't told me.
From a detective point of view, when you make the arrest, that's when the work is really just starting. We've got to be able to find Beverly, and the only person that knows that answer is going to be Aaron Lewis. When I interviewed Aaron Lewis, Aaron was the narcissist. He thinks that he's the smartest person in the room. This was more of a game to him than anything else.
Where's my phone? Because you can't unlock it.
Are we clear?
Yeah.
What, you gonna show me on the phone?
Well, actually, I'll let you listen to something. Then you'll know that I'm serious. And I said, it's you're running out of time.
Normally, we wouldn't give a suspect their evidence like that, but we needed to try to find Beverly. So we allowed him to have his phone. He played a audio note, and it was Beverly Carter's voice.
Carl, it's Beverly. I just want to let you know I'm okay. I haven't been hurt. Just do what he says, and please don't call the police. If you call the police, it could be bad. Just let you know I love you very much.
Aaron told me that he had this message on his phone in the event that he got caught, he can prove that Beverly was alive. We knew that we had to hurry. My concern was that she was not actually alive. He was still playing games with us.
Are you guaranteeing me this one's alive? Depends on how long it takes. How long do we have? How long can a person survive without food and water? Yes, you got. You figure it out.
Aaron Lewis essentially said that if police don't find her in time, it's their fault if she dies. He was trying to set the foundation for him being found not guilty for her death.
The investigators did tell us that he was not being cooperative. And so any hope, relief that we had that he might tell us where she was really fleeting.
So we started looking at his phone records, figuring out where he had been, and we were able to figure out that he had been to a place called Argos, which was a concrete facility. We found out through his background that he had been recently fired from Argos. So I asked him why he would be there if he had been fired, and just threw it out, you take Beverly to Argos. And that was the only time that I ever had any kind of reaction from him. I knew right then that's probably where she was going to be at. We immediately sent a search team to the Argos plant. It was late in the evening. One of the detectives searching the wood line saw some fresh dirt and walked over, and as that detective was walking through that dirt, she actually tripped on something. And she looked back to see, and it was Beverly's elbow that was protruding out of the ground. When we uncovered Beverly from the grave, we found out that she was duct taped from the eyes to the chin that covered her mouth and her nose. Obviously, she suffocated. The location where they buried her is actually a cement runoff. Had we not found her when we did, she would have been completely covered with concrete in another matter of days. When Beverly's body was found, obviously we were hoping to find her alive. So when we found her deceased, it was probably the worst, best feeling I've ever had.
When police found Beverly's body, they immediately questioned Aaron and Crystal. They charged them with multiple crimes, including capital murder.
Once Beverly's body is located, we have to tell the family that she's been found. It's a very hard job to do. I've had to do it a lot, and it's never easy to have to tell a family member that their loved ones is deceased. Division captain went and told the husband, Carl, that we had located Beverly and she was deceased. And then Beverly's friends actually got together and went and told her sons that she had been found.
I was awakened at 4 a.m. with people at my doorstep. And standing there at the door were some of my mom's real estate colleagues, all with very solemn expression. And I let them in my home, and they immediately said that my mom had been found. And I was so excited. And my response was, well, where is she? And one of her friends said to me, oh, sweetie, your mom wasn't found alive.
We weren't there yet. We weren't to a place where we were talking about her not being alive.
And it didn't seem real. It didn't seem possible. It just seemed like a bad movie. Probably the most confused person in the whole situation was, and still is, my dad. My dad lost his wife of 34 years. His whole world just was taken from him in a moment.
The autopsy report showed that Erin wrapped her entire head in duct tape and basically created a mask, which she couldn't breathe. She laid there and suffocated. She was unable to rip it off because her hands were duct taped behind her back. She just laid there on the ground out there and died. I think Beverly went through hell in her final hours when she died. They made her walk to the gravesite. I can't imagine going through what she went through.
She literally laid in her grave, taking her last breath.
Ultimately, Crystal Lowry did confess to being involved and agreed to tell us everything in agreement to a lighter sentence, because in the state of Arkansas, kidnapping and capital murder brings either the death penalty or life in prison without parole. So instead of taking that, she decided to take a 30-year plea deal in exchange for testimony in court explaining how and why this happened. Crystal Lowry was a nursing student, and the night that Beverly went missing, Erin had spoken about doing a kidnapping for ransom. She suggested kidnapping a realtor broker because brokers usually had a lot of money. So they conducted an online search for a realtor broker in the area, and Beverly was the first name that popped up.
Crystal had recently married Erin, and it seemed at first like Erin was acting alone until police came to know Crystal a little bit better. She maybe wasn't the ringleader, but she was feeding him ideas on how to commit his intended crime even better.
Erin Lewis made contact with my mom requesting to see the property.
Panicked, so he left, went back to Crystal, told her what was going on, so they had to come up with a new plan. It was Crystal's idea to kill Beverly. She told Erin, "You've got no choice. You're going to have to kill her, so go do what you've got to do."
she knew too much already. So he went and bought a shovel and put her back in his car, drove her to the site of his former.
Beverly was such a good friend. She was my best friend. And this is a reminder of how much I miss the things that we could be doing together and how much fun we had doing those things together, but we can't do them anymore because she's not here. This is actually the dress that they buried her in because they knew that she loved that dress and they wanted her to have that to be buried in. That's what they did.
It wasn't long after we laid Beverly to rest that we learned that Aaron was a 6-time felon and he married Crystal and then he ran out of money.
Supposedly the two were trying to get a divorce and couldn't afford it. So that was the reason that they were going to try to kidnap somebody and get some ransom money so they could afford to get a divorce.
He saw my mom as an easy way to get money. My mom was not fantastically wealthy. He just ruined her beautiful family because he only cared about getting rich.
Aaron Lewis went on trial January of 2016 at Pulaski County Circuit Court.
Aaron Lewis was at times within an arm's length from us. There was a part of me that wanted to just shake him and ask why. And then there were other moments of just sheer rage as they were showing the jury pictures of my mom being unearthed from that shallow grave.
The most standout moment in the trial for me is when the prosecutor, during closing arguments, took a roll of duct tape and she grabbed it and just opened it real fast. And you know, duct tape makes a distinct sound when you open it. And she said that's the last sound that Beverly Carter ever heard. And I'll never forget that.
While we were waiting for the verdict, Carl and I actually went into a side room and I heard heels like running down a hallway. And one of our prosecuting attorneys came in and said the verdict's in.
The verdict the jury came up with is that Aaron Lewis was guilty of capital murder and kidnapping. When that guilty verdict came in, it was like 1,000 pounds was lifted off my chest.
Tears just began to flow and just, I don't know that there was happiness from the sense of the fact that we had gotten justice for my mom. But also there was just relief that this part of this journey was over.
For capital murder, Aaron Lewis was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And kidnapping, he was also sentenced to a life sentence. So basically, he got 2 life sentences.
There's a part of me that thinks that if you take a life, you shouldn't be given the luxury of keeping your own. But they were given fair trials. And justice, at least when defined like that, was served.
He's never going to be able to get out. He'll never see the light of day again. And now Aaron gets to sit in prison the rest of his life and remember what he did. I do think about this case. I think about Beverly a lot and the stuff that she actually went through. And I always think back to the voicemail that she left.
Carl, it's Beverly. I just want to let you know I'm okay. I haven't been hurt. Just want you to know I love you very much.
The calmness in her voice is just, I don't know how somebody could be so calm going through that kind of thing.
The details are always kind of hard to hear because she was such a scaredy cat. She was always afraid of the littlest things. That's what hurts the most. I do pretty good until I think about her final moments on Earth, and those break me. They're really hard.
Carl Jr., her son, created the Beverly Carter Foundation to help realtors try to educate them on better ways to stay safe in doing their job and come up with ways to make their job safer.
Carl felt this pressure to take just the worst thing in his life and make it better for somebody else. And it was his therapy. He needed to speak about it. The foundation for him was a way to process his grief.
We do work alongside Carl Jr. with his foundation and make sure safety is first and foremost with every agent. I'm really proud of Carl doing that, and I think that his mother would be very proud of him because I think that this foundation carries on Beverly's legacy of trying to help people.
Looking back, having Beverly as my mother-in-law was truly one of the greatest gifts. I will always choose to remember her in the fact that she had a weakness for sweets and she hated exercise and just wanted to live out her days at the beach, which is basically me in a nutshell now. But I think that remembering her will always be that she was truly one of the greatest friends that I'll ever have. I hit the jackpot with her.
My mom was the matriarch of our family. She was the center. She made everyone feel welcome. She was the first hello you heard when you came through the door, and she was always out greeting you, goodbye. She took care of all of us. Navigating life without her has been a challenge for our family. We're all trying to step up and trying to make her proud.
Black Ridge Files, a fictional cold case thriller. Part 1. Some towns bury their secrets beneath concrete. Black Ridge buried theirs beneath silence. On an October morning, 40 years after a young investigative reporter vanished without a trace, a construction crew widening an abandoned county highway unearthed a rusted metal evidence box sealed inside a collapsed drainage culvert. The workers expected old survey equipment or forgotten utility records. Instead, they found a weatherproof envelope containing a faded cassette tape, a cracked 35mm film canister, and a single evidence bag holding a blood-stained handkerchief labeled only with 3 words written in black marker. Do not destroy. No case number. No signature. No explanation. Within hours, the discovery reached the Black Ridge Sheriff's Office, where Detective Daniel Mercer stared at the evidence spread across the conference table. The handwriting looked decades old. The tape was brittle. The film had partially fused together. The biological sample had somehow survived inside multiple layers of plastic, protected from moisture and sunlight. Someone had wanted these items to survive. Someone had hidden them where they would remain untouched for generations. Daniel had investigated murders, disappearances, fraud, and organized crime during his 23-year career, but something about this discovery felt different. It wasn't merely evidence. It was a message. The archives identified only one unsolved disappearance from that era involving missing investigative materials. Emily Carter, 28 years old, reporter, last seen leaving the offices of the Black Ridge Chronicle on the evening of October 14th. Her car was found abandoned near an old freight warehouse the following morning. Her camera disappeared. Her notebooks vanished. Emily was never found. The investigation collapsed under rumors, conflicting witness statements, and a complete lack of physical evidence. Eventually, the file was stamped inactive and placed in storage where dust slowly replaced urgency. Until today. Forensic biologist Claire Bennett carefully removed the blood sample from its aging packaging. "If we're lucky," she said quietly, "there may still be recoverable DNA." Daniel didn't answer. He was looking at the cassette tape. Its handwritten label carried another unsettling sentence. She found the ledger. Nothing else. No names. No dates. Only 5 words capable of reopening a mystery that had slept for 4 decades. Black Ridge looked peaceful from the outside. Tree-lined streets, brick storefronts, families who greeted each other by first name. A town that seemed untouched by time. Yet every older resident reacted the same way when Emily Carter's name resurfaced. Their voices lowered. Their smiles faded. Some claimed they barely remembered. Others remembered too much. An elderly waitress at the town diner quietly admitted she still kept a newspaper clipping from the week Emily vanished. "I always thought she'd come back," she whispered. "No one just disappears." Daniel had heard that sentence before, too many times. Sometimes people disappeared because they chose to. Sometimes because someone else chose for them. The laboratory spent 3 days stabilizing the cassette before attempting playback. Most investigators expected silence. Instead, static filled the speakers. Wind, footsteps, a distant train horn. Emily's voice emerged briefly. "If anyone finds this..." Static swallowed the next sentence. Another voice interrupted. Male, calm, impossible to identify. Then running, heavy breathing, a metallic door slamming shut. The recording ended with a single sharp sound that no audio specialist could immediately identify. The room remained silent. Claire stopped the recorder. "It isn't much." Daniel nodded. "It's enough. Enough to prove Emily had created the recording herself. Enough to prove she knew she was in danger. Enough to prove someone else had been with her." The damaged film proved even more difficult. Digital restoration recovered only a handful of usable frames. Most were ruined forever. The first image showed stacks of shipping crates inside an abandoned warehouse. The second captured several men standing around rolled maps spread across a wooden table. Their faces remained hidden in shadow. The final photograph froze everyone in the laboratory. It wasn't the men. It wasn't the warehouse. It was a reflection in a dirty window. Emily stood outside with her camera raised. Behind her, barely visible through the fading grain, another figure watched from only a few feet away. Not posing, not speaking, watching, as though they already knew she was there. Daniel pinned the restored photograph onto the evidence board. For the first time in decades, the forgotten disappearance had something tangible. A voice, a blood sample, a photograph. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to hide these clues instead of destroying them. Why? Because they expected the truth to matter one day. Or because they hoped someone patient enough would finally understand what Emily had been trying to expose. Daniel looked through the window toward the quiet streets of Black Ridge. The town appeared exactly as it always had. Children walked home from school. Cars rolled slowly past courthouse. The church bell echoed across the square. Ordinary, comfortable, safe. Yet somewhere beneath that ordinary surface lay a story powerful enough to survive 40 years inside a rusted box buried beneath an abandoned highway. Daniel picked up the old case file and brushed away the dust gathering along its edges. The faded cover still carried the original title, Missing person. He crossed it out with a black marker. Then he wrote 3 new words beneath it. Active investigation again. Black Ridge Files, a fictional cold case thriller. Part 2. The morning after the case was officially reopened, Black Ridge woke beneath a blanket of cold fog that clung to every rooftop and curled through every empty street. The courthouse bell rang 7 slow notes, disappearing into the mist before the final echo had a chance to fade. Detective Daniel Mercer stood alone inside the evidence room, staring at the enlarged photograph recovered from Emily Carter's damaged film. The shadow behind her refused to leave his thoughts. It wasn't just a silhouette. Someone had been close enough to reach her, close enough to know she had seen something she wasn't supposed to see. Claire Bennett entered carrying a thick laboratory folder. We finished the first round of testing. Daniel looked up. The blood sample? Claire nodded. The DNA survived. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. 40 years had passed, yet modern forensic science had recovered a usable genetic profile from the weather handkerchief. It belongs to Emily? Daniel asked. Partially. She placed 2 reports on the table. The blood contains DNA from 2 individuals. Daniel frowned. 2. One profile matches biological material collected from Emily's personal belongings preserved by her family. And the other? Claire slowly closed the folder. Unknown. The room fell silent. For decades, investigators have possessed nothing that connected another individual directly to Emily's disappearance. Now they had an unidentified DNA profile waiting for a name. Daniel drove to the abandoned offices of the Black Ridge Chronicle. The newspaper had closed years earlier. Broken windows overlooked an empty parking lot where weeds pushed through cracked asphalt. Dust floated through shafts of sunlight pouring across abandoned desks. Most filing cabinets had been emptied decades ago. One remained locked. After obtaining legal authorization, Daniel forced it open. Inside sat dozens of yellowing reporter notebooks, payroll records, Auditorial Calendas. Nothing unusual, until he discovered a folder labeled only with Emily's initials. The folder contained no articles, only appointment slips. Every meeting she had scheduled during the final week before disappearing had been crossed out by hand, except one. October 14th, 8:30 p.m. Meet confidential source. Location omitted. No further notes. Someone had removed the most important page. Back at headquarters, Rachel Collins continued interviewing longtime residents. Many claimed their memories had faded. One retired mechanic remembered something unexpected. The reporter kept asking about trucks. What kind of trucks? Rachel asked. Old delivery trucks. Why? He shrugged. Said they were moving things after midnight. What things? I don't know. He paused. But she wasn't asking about cargo. Rachel leaned forward. What was she asking? Who was driving them? Claire spent the afternoon restoring additional seconds from a cassette recording. Digital filters reduced decades of static. Emily's voice became clearer. If you're hearing this, static. They changed the records. Another burst of interference. Don't trust. The sentence vanished beneath electrical noise. Daniel listened repeatedly. The missing word seemed almost deliberate, as though time itself had chosen exactly which secrets to preserve and which to erase. That evening, a call arrived from the county archive. An elderly volunteer had discovered a sealed envelope tucked inside a forgotten property survey file. The handwriting matched the label found on the evidence box. Daniel hurried across town. The envelope contained only a single folded map. No letter. No explanation. Red pencil circles marked 3 locations. The abandoned freight warehouse. The old railway bridge. An isolated quarry nearly 15 miles outside Black Ridge. 3 places. 1 triangle. Rachel spread the map across the conference table. Emily was connecting these. Daniel nodded slowly. But how? No one knew. Not yet. The following morning, investigators searched the railway bridge first. Most of the structure had collapsed years earlier. Rust coated every remaining beam. Below, a narrow creek wound through dense trees. Near one support column, a forensic technician noticed deep scratches carved into the steel, not random marks, coordinates. Claire entered them into the mapping software. The numbers pointed directly toward the abandoned quarry. Daniel folded the map carefully. She wanted someone to follow this. Rain began falling before the team reached the quarry. Heavy clouds turned the landscape almost black. Excavators from a nearby construction company assisted in clearing decades of fallen rock near the coordinates. Hours passed. Nothing. Then a shovel struck metal. The sound echoed through the empty quarry. Workers uncovered a small ammunition box wrapped in rotting canvas. Inside lay dozens of newspaper clippings tied together with faded string. Every article involved missing financial records, disputed land ownership, or unexplained warehouse fires across Black Ridge during the late 1970s and early 1980s. Emily hadn't been investigating a single disappearance. She had been assembling a much larger story. Tucked beneath the clippings rested a folded note written in the same unmistakable handwriting. If this box is found before I come back, it means I was right. Daniel carefully lowered the paper. Outside, thunder rolled across the quarry. The investigation had changed once again. Emily Carter hadn't vanished while chasing a rumor. She had uncovered a pattern. And somewhere inside that pattern was the reason someone had wanted her story buried forever. Black Ridge Files, a fictional cold case thriller. Part 3. The rain had stopped by dawn, leaving the abandoned quarry wrapped in silence. The evidence box recovered the previous evening sat beneath bright forensic lights inside the Black Ridge Sheriff's Office. Detective Daniel Mercer spread the newspaper clippings across the conference table one by one. At first glance, they appeared unrelated. Warehouse fires, disputed land surveys, missing accounting records, anonymous threats mailed to local businesses. Individually, they meant very little. Together, they formed a timeline stretching nearly 15 years before Emily Carter disappeared. Claire Bennett noticed something everyone else had overlooked. Every clipping carried a tiny blue check mark in one corner. Not printed, drawn by hand. Emily hadn't simply collected articles. She had verified them. Somehow, she confirmed every story before adding it to her collection. She was building evidence. Claire said. Daniel nodded. Not writing headlines. Rachel Collins spent the morning inside the county archives, searching for every public document connected to the newspaper clippings. Hours later, she emerged carrying 2 heavy storage boxes. Most files were ordinary. Permits, tax records, inspection reports. But nearly every folder contained something unusual. Missing pages. Entire sections had been removed decades earlier. Someone had destroyed the records. Someone had carefully edited history. Daniel stared at the gaps left behind. Who had access? Rachel answered immediately. Back then, almost anyone working in county administration. Too many people, unless they were all removing the same thing. Meanwhile, Claire returned to Emily's cassette recording. Artificial intelligence restored another few seconds hidden beneath the static. Emily's breathing became clearer. Then her voice. That there are 6. The recording cracked violently. They meet. Another burst of interference. The ledger. Silence. Daniel replayed the sentence again and again. There are 6. 6 what? 6 suspects? 6 meetings? 6 companies? The tape refused to explain. Late that afternoon, an unexpected visitor walked into the sheriff's office. Margaret Ellis, 82 years old, former librarian. She carried a small package wrapped in brown paper. I've kept this long enough. Inside rested an old library card. Emily Carter's name was stamped across the front. Tucked behind it was a folded sheet of paper. Not a letter. A list. Book titles. Every title concerned property law, surveying techniques, corporate accounting, or historical land ownership. Daniel frowned. Why would she borrow these? Margaret smiled sadly. Because she wasn't investigating a murder. What was she investigating? The town. That answer lingered long after Margaret left. Emily had been chasing something larger than any single crime. She believed Black Ridge itself was hiding a secret. The team returned to the abandoned freight warehouse before sunset. The building looked even more isolated beneath dark clouds gathering on the horizon. Most of the structure had collapsed. Only the central storage hall remained standing. Daniel carried the restored photograph with him. He positioned himself exactly where Emily had stood 4 decades earlier. Claire compared the angle. Move 2 feet left. He did. Stop. The perspective matched perfectly. Daniel lowered the photograph. From that exact position, a narrow opening became visible between 2 broken walls. The gap could not be seen from anywhere else. Hidden behind fallen steel beams lay a concrete stairway descending beneath the warehouse floor. Rachel looked toward Daniel. This wasn't on the original blueprints. No, it wasn't. The air underground felt cold and stale. Flashlights swept across damp concrete walls, stained by decades of neglect. The passage led to a reinforced room, supported by thick steel columns. Most shelves were empty. Dust covered everything, except the floor. Fresh footprints. Not recent, but far newer than 40 years. Someone had visited this room long after Emily disappeared. Daniel knelt beside one print. Boot tread. Modern. Not military. Not work-issued. Commercial hiking footwear. Whoever entered had come prepared. Claire examined the shelves. One section contained rectangular outlines where boxes had once rested. Removed. Carefully. Nothing had been smashed. Nothing stolen in haste. Someone knew exactly what belonged there. Rachel discovered a small object beneath a rusted cabinet. A brass token. One side displayed an engraved raven. The reverse carried a single number. 6. Daniel turned it slowly beneath the flashlight. The tape echoed in his memory. There are 6. The coincidence felt impossible. Back at headquarters, analysts searched every historical record for the raven symbol. Nothing. No registered business. No civic organization. No company logo. Until an elderly deputy remembered something from his first year on the force. There was an old social club. What kind of club? Daniel asked. The deputy shrugged. No one really knew. What was it called? The Raven Circle. When did it disappear? It didn't. He hesitated. It just stopped meeting publicly. The room fell silent. Emily's tape. The numbered brass token. The hidden room. The missing documents. For the first time, every clue seemed to point toward the same shadow. Not a single suspect. Not a random act. An organized group that had spent decades making sure certain truths never reached daylight. Daniel pinned the brass token beside Emily's photograph on the evidence board. The number 6 reflected under the office lights like a silent promise. Whatever Emily had discovered beneath the abandoned warehouse, she had come frighteningly close to exposing it. And someone had spent 40 years making certain no one ever finished what she started. Black Ridge Files, a fictional mystery novel. Chapter 4. The brass token rested beneath the evidence lamp long after everyone else had gone home. Daniel Mercer turned it over between gloved fingers, tracing the engraved raven with his eyes. The symbol had appeared nowhere in public records, yet someone had taken the time to manufacture heavy brass tokens, each individually numbered. Organizations created membership cards. Collectors minted coins. But secretive groups favored objects that lasted. Metal survived where paper burned. Across the room, Claire Bennett adjusted the microscope. I found something. Daniel crossed the laboratory. The edge. She rotated the token until a thin groove caught the light. See these marks? He nodded. They're not damage. They're machining marks, Claire said. This wasn't mass-produced. Someone made these in very small batches. Rachel entered carrying a weathered ledger borrowed from the county museum. I think I know where. She opened a fragile book to a faded advertisement from 1978. Harrow Foundry and Machine Works. The factory had once produced custom industrial components before shutting down decades earlier. It also accepted private commissions, including commemorative medallions. Daniel looked at the photograph of the abandoned factory. It's still standing. By late afternoon, the team arrived at Harrow Foundry. Broken windows stare across an overgrown yard. Rusted conveyor belts disappeared into darkness. Nature had slowly reclaimed the property, but the building still carried the weight of industry. Inside, every footstep echoed. Dust covered the concrete floor, except for a narrow path winding toward the rear offices. Someone had walked there recently. Not often, just enough to leave a faint trail. Daniel motioned for silence. The path ended at a steel filing cabinet lying on its side. Behind it, hidden inside the wall, was a narrow maintenance passage. It wasn't large enough for machinery, only for a person. The corridor opened into a forgotten workshop. Old lathes lined one wall. Shelves held rusted molds. Most had no labels. One wooden drawer remained locked. Claire carefully pried it open. Inside rested 6 circular metal dies. Each carried the image of the same raven, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 6th slot was empty. Daniel looked down at the token recovered beneath the warehouse. Number 6. It fit the missing space perfectly. Someone had removed it years ago. Not by accident. On purpose. Near the back of the workshop, Rachel noticed a bulletin board barely hanging from the wall. Most papers had rotted away. One remained pinned beneath a rusted tack. A handwritten reminder. No names. No signatures. Just a single sentence. When the 6 returns, finish what was started. The words lingered in the silent room. No one rushed to explain them. No one could. Outside, evening settled over Black Ridge. The abandoned factory stood quiet once more, but it no longer felt empty. It felt like another forgotten chapter in a much larger story, one that Emily Carter had nearly uncovered decades earlier. Daniel slipped the brass token back into its evidence pouch. For the first time since reopening the investigation, he no longer felt as though he was chasing scattered clues. He was following a trail someone else had deliberately left behind, and whoever had left it seemed to believe that one day someone patient enough would finally come looking. Black Ridge Files. Chapter 5. The Forgotten Lighthouse. The storm arrived without warning. Dark clouds rolled across the mountains, swallowing the afternoon sky, until Black Ridge disappeared beneath sheets of cold rain. Daniel Mercer stood beneath the awning of the old museum, while Claire Bennett unfolded a brittle map recovered from Harrow Foundry. The map wasn't marked with roads. It showed rivers that no longer existed, forests that had long since been cleared, and, near the edge of the county, a tiny drawing of a lighthouse. Rachel frowned. There isn't a lighthouse anywhere near Black Ridge. There isn't today, Daniel replied. But 40 years ago, maybe there was. The county historian confirmed it. Long before the railroad arrived, a tall stone beacon stood beside an enormous lake that had since been drained to create farmland. The lighthouse never guided ships across an ocean. Instead, it warned barges traveling through an inland canal. When the canal closed, the water disappeared. The lighthouse remained. Forgotten. Almost no one visited it anymore. By sunset, the 3 of them followed an overgrown trail leading through ancient pine trees. Moss covered broken stone markers. Birds fell strangely silent as they approached the ruins. Then Daniel saw it, a tower rising above the forest. Its lantern room had collapsed decades earlier, yet the circular wall still stood against the fading light. Claire smiled. Emily would have come here. Daniel nodded. If the map led us here, she probably solved this clue too. Inside the tower, every step echoed. A spiral staircase climbed into darkness. Some steps had collapsed, forcing the team to climb carefully across gaps in the stone. Halfway up, Rachel noticed something carved into the wall. Not initials, not graffiti, a compass. One of its 4 directions had been replaced with a raven, the same raven engraved on the brass token. Daniel pressed gently against the carving. Nothing happened. Claire studied it more closely. The raven isn't pointing north. She rotated the bronze token inside the carving. A deep click echoed somewhere above them. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Hidden gears, silent for decades, slowly began turning. A section of the staircase shifted aside. Behind it appeared a narrow doorway. Beyond the doorway stretched a circular chamber no larger than a small bedroom. Unlike the abandoned warehouse or foundry, This room had been carefully preserved. Books lined wooden shelves. Maps hung in side glass frames. A large table occupied the center of the room. Everything was covered by white cloth to protect it from dust. Someone had prepared this place for a very long sleep. Rachel carefully lifted one cloth. Beneath it rested a polished wooden box. No look, only a brass plaque. It read, "Knowledge belongs to those who continue the journey." Daniel opened the lid. Inside lay dozens of handwritten journals. None carried Emily Carter's name. Instead, they belonged to explorers, historians, surveyors, and travelers dating back more than a century. Each journal described hidden landmarks scattered throughout Black Ridge, forgotten tunnels, underground rivers, abandoned observatories, mysterious stone circles deep within the forest. Emily hadn't been chasing a crime. She had stumbled onto something much older, a hidden history. As thunder rolled outside, Claire turned the final page of the oldest journal. Folded inside was another map. Unlike the first one, this map extended far beyond Black Ridge, across mountains, across rivers, toward a place marked with only a single symbol, a golden star. Beneath it, written in elegant handwriting, were 6 words. The final archive waits beneath the mountain. Daniel folded the map carefully. For the first time since their journey had begun, none of them spoke about answers, because they all understood the same thing. The mystery wasn't ending. It had only just begun. Outside, lightning illuminated the forgotten lighthouse one last time before darkness swallowed it again. Somewhere beyond the mountains, another secret waited patiently for those willing to keep searching. Black Ridge Files. Chapter 6. Beneath the Sleeping Mountain. The mountain dominated the horizon long before the road reached its base. Its granite cliffs disappeared into low clouds, while dense pine forest swallowed every trail that once led to its summit. According to modern maps, there was nothing remarkable here, only abandoned hiking routes and a forgotten fire lookout that had collapsed years ago. But the century-old map told a different story. A narrow path, drawn in faded ink, curved around the eastern ridge before ending at a symbol unlike anything Daniel had seen before, a circle surrounded by 8 small stars. Rachel folded the map carefully. This place doesn't officially exist anymore. Daniel smiled. That doesn't mean it's gone. The climb began before sunrise. Mist drifted between towering trees, turning every shadow into a moving shape. Birds called from somewhere beyond the fog, but no other sounds disturbed the forest. Hours passed before Claire noticed an unusual line of stones running through the undergrowth. "They're too straight," she whispered. Daniel brushed away moss. Beneath it lay expertly carved granite blocks. An ancient road. Nature had hidden it for decades. Someone had built it centuries ago. By midday, the trail ended at a cliff face. Nothing, only solid rock stretching in both directions. Rachel compared the landscape to the old map. We should be standing right on top of it. Daniel examined the cliff more closely. The stone wasn't natural. One section reflected sunlight differently. A thin seam, almost invisible. Claire discovered a shallow depression shaped like an 8-pointed star. Without speaking, Daniel removed the brass raven token from his backpack. It fit perfectly into the center. A deep rumble echoed beneath the mountain. Dust drifted from the cliffs. Slowly, impossibly, a massive stone doorway began sliding open. Cold air rushed outward, air that smelled untouched by the modern world. Beyond the entrance stretched a vast underground hall illuminated by shafts of sunlight pouring through hidden cracks far above. The chamber was breathtaking. Towering stone columns supported a ceiling lost in darkness. Ancient murals covered the walls. Maps, constellations, rivers, cities that no longer existed. At the center stood a circular table carved from a single block of black stone. Resting upon it was a bronze compass unlike any modern instrument. Its needle spun endlessly. Rachel looked around in amazement. This wasn't built as a fortress. Claire nodded. It was built to preserve knowledge. Daniel approached one mural. Unlike the others, it depicted travelers carrying books instead of weapons. Above them appeared the same inscription, repeated again and again. "The past survives through those who remember." As they explored deeper, they found shells carved directly into the rock. Most were empty. Others held sealed clay cylinders. Inside each cylinder rested carefully rolled parchment protected by wax and linen. Histories, maps, astronomical observations. Diaries written by generations of explorers who had chosen to hide their discoveries rather than let them disappear during times of war and chaos. Emily Carter's name suddenly appeared in a visitor register near the entrance, not as an owner, not as a guardian, simply as the most recent explorer to reach the archive. Date, October 12th, only 2 days before she vanished. Daniel traced her signature with a gloved finger. So she really made it here. Claire noticed another line beneath Emily's name, written in different handwriting. The archive chooses patience over glory. Protect it. A faint sound echoed through the chamber. Not machinery. Footsteps. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the columns. Daniel extinguished his flashlight. The others followed. Silence returned. Then another step. Slow. Measured. Not threatening. Watching. A figure emerged in the shadows, wrapped in a weathered green cloak, carrying an old lantern whose warm light barely pierced the darkness. The stranger smiled gently. You found the first key. Daniel instinctively stepped forward. Who are you? The old man lowered the lantern. My name no longer matters. He glanced toward the endless shelves surrounding them. But this place does. Outside, thunder rolled above the mountain. Deep beneath the earth, the forgotten archive had finally welcomed new visitors. And for the first time since Emily Carter disappeared, someone was waiting with answers. Black Ridge Files. Chapter 7, The Keeper of the Archive. The old man lifted the lantern higher, and warm amber light swept across the immense chamber. Shadows retreated from the towering stone columns, revealing countless shells carved directly into the mountain. Thousands of scrolls, journals, maps, and wooden cases rested in perfect order, untouched by time. Daniel Mercer studied the stranger carefully. You've been expecting us. The old man smiled. I've been expecting someone. He placed a lantern on the circular stone table. For many years, explorers came looking for treasure. Historians came looking for proof. Others came looking for power. None of them understood what this place truly was. Claire glanced around the chamber. What is it? The old man rested a hand on one of the stone shelves. A memory. He introduced himself only as a keeper. No surname, no history, no explanation. He claimed that each generation entrusted one person with protecting the archive, not from thieves alone, but from those who believed knowledge should belong to only a select few. The archive doesn't choose heroes, he said quietly. It chooses those willing to protect the truth without owning it. Rachel unfolded Emily Carter's map. You knew Emily. The keeper remained silent for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. She arrived here frightened. What happened? She had discovered people searching for this place. Daniel stepped forward. Did they follow her? I believe they tried. The keeper led them deeper into the archive. Hidden passages branched away from the central hall, like roots beneath an ancient tree. Every corridor ended in another chamber, each dedicated to a different collection. One room preserved astronomical charts. Another contained journals from explorers who had crossed the surrounding mountains more than a century earlier. A third held detailed sketches of caves, rivers, and forgotten settlements erased from modern maps. Claire ran her fingers gently across the edge of a weathered globe. It's incredible. The keeper nodded. The world changes. He looked toward the shelves. Memory shouldn't. At the end of a narrow corridor stood an iron door unlike any they had seen before. Its surface bore the same raven emblem found on the brass token. 6 circular recesses surrounded the symbol. Only one contained a token. Number 6. Daniel removed the brass piece from his pocket and placed it into the matching slot. The mechanism clicked softly. Nothing else happened. There are 5 missing, Rachel observed. Yes, the keeper replied. They were scattered long ago. Why? So no single person could open the chamber alone. Daniel looked at him. What's behind the door? The keeper's expression became unreadable. The chronicle. Claire frowned. The newspaper? No. He shook his head. The original Chronicle. Seeing their confusion, he continued. Long before Black Ridge became a town, travelers crossed these mountains recording everything they witnessed. Floods, eclipses, discoveries, lost civilizations, forgotten languages. Those records became known collectively as the Chronicle. The complete history, Daniel whispered. Exactly. A distant rumble echoed through the mountain. Not thunder. The keeper's face changed instantly. He extinguished the lantern. Someone else is here. The chamber fell into darkness. Daniel heard it too. Footsteps. Several of them. Slow. Measured. Coming from the entrance tunnel. Rachel whispered. Did anyone know we were coming? No, Daniel answered. Then how? The keeper raised a hand for silence. The footsteps stopped. For several long seconds, nothing moved. Then a bright beam of white light swept across the far end of the hall. Flashlights. Someone was searching the archive. The keeper guided them through a narrow passage concealed behind a stone bookshelf. It opened onto a balcony overlooking the central chamber. From there, Daniel counted 4 figures entering the archive below. They wore dark outdoor clothing with no identifying marks. Each carried modern climbing equipment. One unfolded a faded map. Another pointed toward the iron door bearing the Raven emblem. They know exactly where they're going, Claire whispered. Daniel nodded. This was an accident. The intruders hadn't stumbled upon the mountain. They had come prepared. One of them stopped beneath the balcony and looked slowly around the vast chamber. For a heartbeat, Daniel thought their eyes had met. Instead, the figure reached into a backpack and removed a small brass token. Even from a distance, the engraved raven was unmistakable. But this token bore a different number. 3. The keeper closed his eyes. They found another key. Daniel looked from the intruders to the sealed iron door. If those people possessed even a few more of the missing tokens, the chamber that had remained closed for generations might soon be opened. The mystery was no longer about discovering the archive. It was about protecting it. Far below, the strangers began moving toward the ancient door, their flashlights cutting through centuries of darkness. Daniel tightened his grip on the only token in his possession. For the first time since entering the mountain, he realized they were no longer explorers. They were guardians standing between the archive and those determined to claim its deepest secrets. Black Ridge Files. Chapter 8. The Chamber of Echoes. No one spoke. From a narrow stone balcony, Daniel Mercer watched the 4 intruders move cautiously across the central hall. Their flashlights swept over the towering shelves, illuminating thousands of forgotten journals before vanishing into darkness again. The keeper remained perfectly still. They're disciplined, he whispered. They've done this before. One of the strangers unfolded another map on the circular stone table. Unlike Emily Carter's weathered sketch, this map had been drawn recently, its edges crisp and clean. Someone had spent years piecing together fragments of the archive's location. They don't know everything, Claire said quietly. Not yet. The intruders stopped before the iron door. The man carrying token 3 placed it into the matching recess. A deep metallic click echoed through the chamber. The ancient mechanism awakened. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Stone gears hidden inside the mountain began turning for the first time in generations. Then, silence. The door refused to open. The leader frowned. He removed the token and examined the remaining empty slots. We're still missing them, he muttered. His voice echoed through the hall. Daniel recognized something immediately. The strangers weren't vandals. They understood the system. Someone had taught them. The keeper led the group through a maze of narrow corridors hidden behind the archive shelves. Every passage curved differently. Some climbed upward. Others descended beneath the mountain. There are dozens of routes, Rachel whispered. How do you remember them? The old man smiled. I don't. He pointed toward tiny symbols carved into the walls. The mountain remembers for me. Each symbol represented a constellation. Following them in the correct order always led back to the central hall. Following them incorrectly could leave someone wandering underground for hours or days. After nearly 20 minutes, They entered a chamber unlike any they had seen before. The room was perfectly circular. Its walls were polished until they reflected every movement like dark mirrors. At the center stood a stone pedestal supporting an enormous crystal sphere nearly 3 feet across. Daniel approached carefully. "What is this?" The keeper rested a hand on the pedestal. "The Chamber of Echoes." Claire tilted her head. "It is a machinery." "No, it's memory." The keeper gently rotated the crystal sphere. Light from the lantern entered countless tiny fractures inside the stone. Suddenly, shimmering images appeared across the polished walls. Not photographs, not holograms, reflections, ancient scholars, travelers, map makers, explorers gathered around the same pedestal centuries earlier. Rachel stared in amazement. "It's recording them." The keeper nodded. Every keeper leaves behind knowledge for the next. Daniel slowly turned. The figures moved silently, demonstrating hidden passages, forgotten symbols, and safe routes through the mountain. It wasn't magic. It was an ingenious optical archive built long before electricity. Then the images changed. Claire gasped. A young woman appeared beside the pedestal, carrying a camera around her neck. Emily Carter. She looked exhausted. Her clothes were dirty from hiking. She spoke directly toward the crystal. No sound emerged, only gestures. The keeper quietly opened a wooden cabinet beneath the pedestal. Inside rested an old mechanical projector connected to delicate brass gears. He wound the mechanism. A soft click echoed. Emily's voice filled the chamber. "If someone is watching this..." She paused, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "It means I reached the archive." Daniel held his breath. Emily continued. "I wasn't followed here." Another pause. "But they know I'm searching." She unfolded a map. "There are 6 Raven keys." Daniel instinctively looked toward the brass token in his pocket. Together they unlocked the Chronicle Chamber. Emily smiled faintly. "If you're seeing this, then at least 1 key survived." The recording flickered. "I hid the 6th where only someone following the clues would find it." Claire exchanged a glance with Rachel. "That's our key." Emily nodded within the recording, almost as if she had heard them. "But don't open the chamber." Daniel frowned. Emily's expression became serious. "Not until you know who else is looking." The image dissolved into shimmering light. A sudden bell echoed through the mountain. The keeper's face lost all color. "They've entered the western galleries." Daniel looked toward the corridor. "How?" They found another passage. The old man hurried toward the exit. "They're moving faster than I expected." The group returned to the central passages just in time to hear distant voices. The intruders had separated. Flashlight beams danced between the ancient shelves. One of them paused before an enormous stone map carved into the wall. Another carefully photographed every symbol they encountered. "They're documenting everything," Rachel whispered. "They're not here to destroy the archive." "No," Daniel replied. "They're here to own it." Far across the hall, the leader reached into his backpack once more. This time he removed another brass token. Number 2. The keeper closed his eyes. "They've collected 2 of the missing keys." Daniel tightened his grip around token 6. Only 3 keys remain unaccounted for. If the strangers found them first, the sealed Chronicle Chamber, untouched for centuries, might finally open, and no one knew what waited behind its ancient iron door. Black Ridge Files. Chapter 9, The Trial of the Mountain. The mountain seemed to awaken. A deep vibration rolled through the ancient halls, sending fine dust drifting from the vaulted ceiling. Somewhere beyond a labyrinth of stone corridors, unseen gears groaned with a slow, rhythmic pulse, as if the archive itself had sensed the arrival of strangers. Daniel tightened his grip on the Raven key. Far across the chamber, the intruders continued searching with quiet precision. They weren't rushing. They knew haste was the quickest way to become lost underground. The keeper watched them in silence. "They've studied the old maps," he said, "but maps only show the paths." He looked toward the darkness beyond the central hall. "They don't reveal the trials." The keeper guided Daniel, Claire, and Rachel through a narrow passage hidden behind a carved bookshelf. After several twisting corridors, they arrive at a circular doorway engraved with dozens of stars. Unlike every chamber they had seen before, this one had no shelves, no yernels, no artifacts, only 6 stone pillars arranged around a shallow pool of perfectly still water. Above them, a natural opening in the mountain allowed a thin beam of sunlight to fall directly onto the center of the room. It changes every day, the keeper explained. The mountain uses the sun as its clock. Claire examined the pillars. Each carried a different symbol: a compass, a raven, a tree, a river, a lantern, and a mountain peak. They're not decorations, she whispered. They're instructions. Rachel walked slowly around the pool. The water was so clear that it reflected the ceiling like polished glass. Then she noticed something unusual. The reflection showed 7 pillars. The chamber itself contained only 6. She knelt beside the pool. The 7th pillar only exists in the reflection. Daniel looked down. As the sunlight shifted, the reflected pillar aligned with a blank section of the stone floor. Claire pressed gently against the rock. A soft click echoed. The floor slid open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward. The keeper smiled. The first trial is in strength. He looked at the hidden staircase. Its observation. The staircase descended deep beneath the archive into a vast natural cavern illuminated by glowing blue crystals embedded in the walls. An underground river flowed silently through the center. Crossing it was a bridge unlike any Daniel had ever seen. It had no handrails, no ropes, only dozens of floating stone platforms arranged in an irregular pattern. Rachel frowned. There's no obvious path. The keeper pointed toward the cavern ceiling. Look up. Tiny constellations have been carved into the rock overhead. Claire compared them to the symbols on the 6 pillars. The stars are marking the safe stones. Daniel stepped carefully onto the first platform. It remained steady. The second, the third. Each correct step matched the constellation above. One wrong move sent a nearby platform crashing into the river below. The mountain wasn't trying to trap visitors. It was testing whether they paid attention. Halfway across, they heard voices echoing from the upper tunnel. The intruders had found the chamber. Flashlight beams danced across the cavern entrance. The leader studied the bridge with narrowed eyes. He immediately stepped onto the nearest platform. It shifted violently. Chunks of stone collapsed into the rushing river. He jumped backward just in time. They don't know the pattern, Claire whispered. They'll figure out eventually, Daniel replied. But it'll cost them time. Safely across the bridge, the group entered another chamber carved directly into the heart of the mountain. Unlike the vast archive, this room was almost empty. At its center stood a single stone pedestal. Resting upon it was another raven key. Number 5. Daniel approached cautiously. No traps. The keeper smiled. The trial already happened. Daniel lifted the key. Nothing moved. Nothing collapsed. Instead, words slowly appeared across the polished surface of the pedestal as centuries-old ink reacted to the fresh air. Knowledge belongs to those who earn it, never those who seize it. Rachel carefully copied the inscription into her notebook. Before they could leave, a distant crash echoed through the cavern. The intruders had solved the bridge. Faster than expected, the keeper's expression grew serious. They're adapting. Daniel slipped key 5 into a protective pouch beside key 6. We need the remaining keys. No, the keeper replied quietly. We need to reach the Chronicle first. Claire looked puzzled. But the door can't open without all 6. The keeper nodded. True. He looked toward the darkness beyond the chamber. But there's another way. He led them into a narrow tunnel, descending even deeper beneath the mountain. The air grew warmer. Ancient carvings became more elaborate. Instead of maps and stars, the walls depicted people passing books from one generation to the next. Not kings, not warriors, teachers, explorers, children. The archive had never been about hiding knowledge forever. It had always been about protecting it until the right people arrived. Far behind them, faint voices echoed through the tunnels. The strangers were getting closer. Daniel looked over his shoulder one last time before following the keeper into the darkness. Somewhere ahead lay the hidden route to the Chronicle Chamber. Somewhere behind, others were closing the distance with every careful step. The race through the mountain had truly begun. Black Ridge Files. Chapter 10, The Hidden Observatory. The tunnel narrowed until only a single person could walk through at a time. Daniel Mercer led the way with a lantern, while Claire and Rachel followed close behind. The keeper walked last, occasionally brushing centuries of dust from symbols carved into the stone walls. Unlike the chambers above, these passages were silent. No shelves, no hierros, no elaborate carvings, only smooth rock shaped by countless generations of careful hands. After nearly an hour walking, the tunnel widened into a vast cavern where daylight poured through a circular opening high above. Daniel stopped. An enormous observatory stood before them, not the kind built with metal telescopes and polished glass, but one carved entirely from stone. Concentric rings surrounded a raised platform at the center of the chamber. Bronze arms, gears, and engraved discs formed an intricate mechanism aligned with the opening in the ceiling. Claire whispered in amazement, "It's an astronomical instrument." The keeper nodded. "It measures more than time." The great mechanism remained perfectly still. Rachel stepped closer to the central platform. Every bronze ring was engraved with symbols they had already encountered throughout the archive: stars, rivers, ravens, mountains, lanterns, and winding paths. Near the center were 6 empty circular sockets. Daniel immediately understood. The Raven keys. The keeper smiled. They were never made for a door alone. Daniel removed keys 5 and 6 from their protective pouch. One by one, he placed them into the matching sockets. A soft metallic tone echoed through the chamber. The great bronze rings shifted a few degrees. Ancient gears awakened with a slow, deliberate rhythm. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Sunlight reflected across polished bronze surfaces, scattering brilliant patterns of light around the room. Only 4 sockets remained empty. As the mechanism turned, beams of sunlight converged upon the floor. A glowing map slowly appeared, not painted, not projected, created entirely by reflected light. Rivers shimmered across the stone. Mountain ranges emerged. Forgotten roads connected distant valleys. At the center of the map, a single point burned brighter than all the others: the Chronicle Chamber. Rachel carefully compared the glowing map with Emily Carter's notebook. They don't match. Daniel looked closer. Because the mountain changed. The keeper nodded. The passages shift over time. He pointed toward the illuminated route. The observatory reveals the current path. Suddenly, the mechanism produced another sound. A low chime. Then another. Claire looked toward the entrance. They found us. Far down the tunnel, faint beams of white light flickered against the stone walls. The intruders had entered the observatory. Their footsteps echoed steadily through the cavern. Daniel quickly removed the 2 keys from the mechanism. The glowing map faded almost instantly. Darkness reclaimed the floor. When the 4 strangers finally entered the chamber, the ancient device stood motionless once again. Their leader surveyed the room. He smiled. "So, you found it." Daniel remained silent. The man glanced toward the empty sockets. "You have some of the keys." "And you have the others," Daniel replied. The stranger nodded. "Enough to know we're looking for the same thing." For a long moment, neither group moved. The observatory stood between them like an ancient judge. The stranger finally spoke. "My name is Adrian Cross." It was the first name anyone had offered since entering the mountain. "I've spent 20 years searching for this place." Daniel studied him carefully. "Why?" Cross looked toward the massive bronze mechanism. "Because history shouldn't remain hidden forever." The keeper answered before Daniel could speak. "History should never belong to those who seek fame." Cross laughed softly. "You still believe the old rules. They preserved this archive for centuries. They also buried it." Claire stepped forward. "What exactly do you think is inside the Chronicle Chamber?" Cross looked at her. "The complete chronicle. The original maps. The journals. the discoveries that vanished from history. Rachel folded her arms. And then he smiled. The world deserves to see them. The keeper shook his head. The world deserves truth. There's a difference. Without warning, another deep vibration shook the observatory, not caused by either group. The mountain itself. Small fragments of stone fell from the ceiling. The bronze mechanism rotated slightly on its own. Sunlight shifted across the chamber. The keeper's expression changed. It's happening. Daniel frowned. What is? The alignment. He pointed toward the opening high above. The mountain only reveals a final path once every generation. Cross looked upward in disbelief. So today, that is the day. The last rays of afternoon sunlight poured through the circular opening. The bronze rings began turning without human hands. One after another, hidden mirrors awakened throughout the observatory, sending beams of golden light racing through narrow shafts carved into the mountain. The light disappeared into a distant tunnel beyond the chamber. For only a few minutes, the hidden passage to the Chronicle would remain visible. Daniel looked toward the glowing corridor. Cross looked too. Neither side moved. Not yet. Both understood exactly what the other was thinking. The race was over. The final journey was about to begin. And somewhere beyond the golden corridor, deep within the heart of the mountain, the Chronicle chamber had been waiting for centuries. Black Ridge Files. Chapter 11, The Chamber Beyond Time. Golden light poured into the mountain like a silent river. The narrow corridor ahead, invisible only moments earlier, now shimmered beneath countless reflections cast by the ancient observatory. Every polished mirror hidden within the stone redirected the afternoon sun deeper into the earth, illuminating a passage that had remained concealed for generations. No one spoke. Daniel Mercer and Adrian Cross stood only a few yards apart, watching the same corridor. Neither side wanted a confrontation. Both knew the mountain itself was a greater challenge than the people standing before them. The keeper broke the silence. The passage will remain open only until sunset. Cross glanced toward him. Then we'd better keep moving. For the first time since entering the archive, both groups walked together, not as allies, not quite as rivals, simply as travelers sharing the only path forward. The corridor descended steadily, its walls lined with polished stone that reflected warm golden light in every direction. Strange symbols appeared every few hundred feet, each representing one of the constellations carved throughout the archive. Claire paused beside one. It isn't decoration. The keeper nodded. It's a calendar. Rachel smiled. The whole mountain is one enormous clock. Exactly. After nearly an hour, the corridor opened into a breathtaking cavern. Above them stretched a ceiling filled with thousands of tiny openings where sunlight pierced the darkness like stars. Below stood an immense circular hall unlike anything they had yet encountered. At its center rose 6 towering stone pillars. Each pillar contained one empty recess. The shape was unmistakable. The Raven keys. Daniel carefully removed keys 5 and 6. Across the chamber, Adrian Cross produced keys 2 and 3. 4 of the 6 were now present. Only keys 1 and 4 remained missing. Before anyone could speak, the floor trembled gently. A soft voice echoed through the hall. Not from hidden speakers. Not from any visible person. The chamber itself seemed to speak. Knowledge is never possessed. The words lingered in the air. It is entrusted. Claire slowly turned in every direction. Did you hear? Everyone nodded. The keeper smiled faintly. The chamber remembers. One by one, symbols illuminated across the 6 pillars. A lantern, a compass, a mountain, a river, a raven, a star. Rachel studied them carefully. It's another puzzle. Daniel walked around the chamber. The symbols weren't random. Thin grooves connected the pillars across the stone floor, forming a massive geometric pattern. Claire unfolded Emily Carter's final map. Her eyes widened. The symbols match. She placed the map onto the floor. Every line aligned perfectly with the grooves carved into the chamber centuries earlier. Emily had solved part of the puzzle. She had simply never reached this room. Daniel inserted key 6 into the pillar marked with the raven. A gentle click echoed. Across the chamber, Cross inserted key 3. Nothing happened. The keeper examined the floor. They're in the wrong places. He pointed toward the map. The keys don't belong to their numbers. Claire looked closer. They belong to the journey. One by one, they rearranged the keys according to the order suggested by the ancient map. The moment the fourth key slid into place, beams of pale blue light traveled through the grooves beneath the floor. The entire chamber awakened. Stone gears hidden within the mountain began turning. Far ahead, a massive circular doorway slowly separated down the middle. Cold air drifted outward. The Chronicle chamber was beginning to open. No one rushed inside. Instead, everyone stood in silence. Beyond the doorway stretched a vast library unlike anything Daniel had imagined. Thousands upon thousands of volumes rested on towering shelves carved directly into the mountain. Ancient globes, mechanical star charts, crystal lenses, paintings, navigation instruments. Every generation of keepers had added to the collection. The Chronicle was not a single book. It was an entire civilization's memory. Cross stepped forward, speechless. So this is what we've been searching for. The keeper nodded. Only the beginning. Claire approached one of the nearest shelves. Each volume carried a metal plaque instead of a title. Rather than names, they bore years. Some dated back hundreds of years. Others were surprisingly recent. She stopped abruptly. One spine carried a familiar date, 1983. She carefully removed the journal. Inside were neat handwritten pages. The final entry bore a signature, Emily Carter. Daniel looked over her shoulder. Emily had written, "If you're reading this, I reached the Chronicle. The greatest secret isn't hidden knowledge. It's the people who chose to protect it instead of exploiting it. If history survives, let it belong to everyone, but only when they are ready to understand it." The room fell silent. Even Adrian Cross lowered his head. For the first time since the journey began, everyone understood why Emily had never revealed the archive. She hadn't been trying to hide the truth. She had been trying to protect it until the right moment. Outside the chamber, the last rays of sunlight slowly faded across the mountain. The final page of the Chronicle had not yet been written. It was waiting, not for a conqueror, not for an owner, but for those willing to become its next guardians. Black Ridge Files. Chapter 12, The Library of Living Maps. The silence inside the Chronicle chamber felt different from the silence outside. It wasn't empty. It was alive. Every shelf, every journal, every brass instrument seemed to hold the weight of countless generations. Dust floated lazily through the fading shafts of sunlight, while the enormous stone doorway remained half open behind them. Daniel Mercer stepped carefully onto the polished floor. Nothing echoed. The chamber absorbed every footstep, almost as if it wanted its visitors to speak softly. Claire reached toward the nearest shelf, but stopped before touching it. Something doesn't feel right. The keeper smiled. It shouldn't. She looked at him. Why? Because this place was never built to impress people. He glanced across the endless rows of books. It was built to remind them how small they are. Rachel wandered toward a long oak table positioned beneath a circular skylight. Unlike the journals lining the shelves, the table was completely empty except for a single folded sheet of parchment. No dust covered it. Someone had left it there recently. Daniel unfolded the page. Across the top, written in elegant ink, were only a few words. Every generation writes one final chapter. Below the sentence were 6 blank lines. Nothing else. Claire frowned. It's unfinished. The keeper nodded. It always is. Adrian Cross slowly walked between the towering shelves, his eyes scanning the countless volumes. I spent 20 years believing there was one great secret hidden here. He laughed quietly. There isn't. Daniel looked toward him. There are thousands. Cross nodded. And that's exactly the point. At the far end of the chamber stood an enormous circular frame made entirely of polished bronze. No glass. No painting. Only an empty ring nearly 15 feet across. Strange symbols circled its edge. The keeper approached it with obvious respect. This is the Atlas. Rachel examined it. It looks unfinished. It isn't. The keeper gestured toward Claire. Open Emily's journal. Claire carefully turned to the final page. Pressed between two sheets of paper rested a delicate leaf, unlike any tree growing around Black Ridge. The moment she lifted it free, the bronze ring began to glow. Light gathered inside the empty circle. At first it resembled mist. Then mountains appeared. Forests, rivers, entire landscapes slowly emerged, floated within the ring like a living map. Daniel stared in disbelief. It's showing the world. No, the keeper corrected gently. It's showing possibilities. The map shifted continuously. Ancient roads faded away. New paths appeared. Cities expanded. Forests reclaimed abandoned land. Nothing remained fixed. Claire whispered, "It's changing with time." The keeper nodded. Every explorer who contributed to the chronicle added another piece. He smiled. The map is never finished. Suddenly the glowing landscape darkened. A narrow valley on the western edge of projection began flashing with a faint golden light. Rachel pointed. "What does that mean?" The keeper's expression became serious. "The archive has discovered another keeper station." Daniel frowned. "You mean another place like this?" "Much smaller, but connected." Cross stepped closer. "So there were never just one archive." The keeper nodded. "There's always been a network." The realization settled over the chamber. Black Ridge had never been the destination. It had been one chapter in something far greater. For centuries, explorers, scholars, navigators, and historians had quietly preserved knowledge in hidden sanctuaries scattered across distant lands. The chronicle was their shared memory. A low chime echoed through the library. The atlas slowly dimmed. Sunlight outside had almost disappeared. The keeper looked toward the entrance. The mountain is closing. Stone gears groaned somewhere deep within the walls. The massive doorway began moving almost imperceptibly. "We have to leave?" Rachel asked. The keeper smiled. "The library doesn't belong to visitors." He gently closed Emily Carter's journal. "It waits." Before anyone turned to leave, Daniel noticed something resting beside the blank parchment, a fountain pen. Its silver cap bore the same raven emblem engraved on the keys. The keeper picked it up and handed it to Daniel. "You found the path." Daniel hesitated. "I didn't do it alone." "No keeper ever does." Daniel looked once more at the 6 blank lines beneath the sentence. "Every generation writes one final chapter." Slowly, he uncapped the pen. He wrote only a single sentence. "The search for truth never ends. It only finds new travelers." The ink shimmered briefly before sinking into the parchment. A gentle breeze passed through the chamber. One by one, tiny lights appeared among the towering shelves, glowing like distant stars. The keeper smiled without saying a word. Far beyond Black Ridge, somewhere across mountains and oceans, another hidden station had already begun to awaken. The journey was no longer about uncovering a forgotten mystery. It was about becoming part of a story that would continue long after they were gone. Black Ridge Files. Chapter 13, Beyond the Horizon. Morning arrived slowly over Black Ridge. Mist drifted through the valley while the mountain stood quietly against the pale sky, giving no sign that an immense archive lay hidden beneath its granite slopes. To everyone in the nearby town, it was simply another peaceful day. Only Daniel, Claire, Rachel, Adrian Cross, and the keeper knew that history itself had nearly been lost and quietly preserved. The stone entrance had sealed behind them before dawn. From the outside, there was no crack, no doorway, no trace that anyone had ever entered the mountain. It was as though the archive had vanished once again. The group camped beside a narrow alpine lake before beginning the descent. None of them spoke much. The previous day's discoveries lingered in their thoughts. Adrian Cross finally broke the silence. "I spent half my life believing knowledge should be uncovered as quickly as possible." He watched the morning sunlight ripple across the water. "Now I'm not so sure." The keeper smiled faintly. "Knowledge has never been the danger." "What is?" "Pride." Cross lowered his eyes. For the first time since Daniel had met him, He seemed less like a determined explorer and more like a student standing before an endless library. As they descended the mountain trail, Claire unfolded Emily Carter's journal one final time. Most of the pages had already been read. One had not. The last sheet had been stuck to the cover by decades of age. Carefully separating it, she discovered a short handwritten note. It wasn't addressed to anyone. It simply read, "If someone continues this journey after me, don't waste time looking for heroes. Every generation believes one person changes history. They don't. History survives because ordinary people choose not to let it disappear." Daniel closed the journal. Emily had never imagined statues. She had never wanted recognition. She had only hoped someone would keep walking. Late that afternoon, they returned to the abandoned lighthouse overlooking the dry lake bed. The keeper stopped before the old stone tower. "My responsibility ends here." Daniel looked surprised. "Aren't you coming back?" The old man shook his head. "There's always another keeper." Rachel looked at him. "You mean?" The keeper smiled. "The archive no longer needs someone to hide it." He looked toward Daniel. "It needs people willing to protect its purpose." Without another word, he walked into the forest. Within moments, the trees swallowed him completely. None of them ever saw him again. Weeks passed. Life slowly returned to normal. Daniel resumed work at the sheriff's office. Claire returned to the university laboratory. Rachel completed her research on Black Ridge's forgotten history. Adrian Cross donated his personal collection of maps and journals to the local museum, asking for nothing in return. No one publicly mentioned the archive. Not because it was a secret, because some places deserve respect more than attention. One rainy evening, Daniel unlocked his office and discovered a small package resting on his desk. No return address. Inside lay a leather-bound notebook. The first page contained only a single sentence. "Station 7 acknowledges Station 3. Rachel stared at the message. Station 3? Daniel immediately remembered the atlas. The glowing point beyond the western mountains. Another hidden sanctuary. Another chapter of the Chronicle. Tucked inside the notebook was a beautifully drawn map. Unlike every map they had followed before, this one extended beyond Black Ridge entirely, across distant mountain ranges, through ancient forests, toward an isolated coastline where towering cliffs overlooked a restless sea. In the corner, someone had sketched the familiar raven, but this time its wings were fully spread, as if preparing for flight. Claire smiled. I guess the story wasn't ending after all. Daniel rolled the map closed. No. He looked out the rain-covered window toward the mountains hidden beneath dark clouds. It was introducing the next one. Far away, somewhere beyond the horizon, another archive waited. Another keeper. Another forgotten path. And somewhere, perhaps already watching from the shadows, another traveler had begun following the first clue. The Chronicle would continue to grow, not because it demanded heroes, but because every generation found someone curious enough to ask one more question, brave enough to take one more step, and wise enough to understand that the greatest discoveries were never treasures locked behind stone doors. They were the stories people chose to preserve for those who came after them. As the rain softened outside, Daniel placed Emily Carter's journal beside the new notebook. 2 journeys, 2 generations, 1 endless chronicle. He switched off the office light, closed the door behind him, and stepped into the quiet evening, unaware that somewhere far beyond the mountains, another lantern had just been lit, signaling that the next adventure had already begun. Black Ridge Files. Chapter 14, The Lantern Beyond the Sea. The lighthouse appeared just before dawn. Not the abandoned stone tower overlooking Black Ridge, but another one, far older, standing alone atop jagged cliffs where endless waves crashed against black rock. According to the weathered map left on Daniel's desk, this isolated coast marked the location of Station 7, another sanctuary connected to Chronicle. For nearly 3 weeks, Daniel, Claire, Rachel, and Adrian Cross followed forgotten roads that no modern atlas bothered to name. They crossed mountain passes hidden beneath drifting clouds, quiet villages where ancient stories were still whispered around evening fires, and forests so old that sunlight barely reached the ground. Every mile seemed to carry them farther away from the familiar world. Yet every clue confirmed they were heading in the right direction. The lighthouse stood on a narrow peninsula surrounded by towering cliffs. Unlike the one near Black Ridge, this beacon still shone each night. No ships sailed nearby. No harbor existed for miles. Yet someone continued lighting the lantern. Claire watched its golden beam sweep slowly across the sea. Who's keeping it lit? Adrian smiled. I think we're about to find out. A winding stone staircase led them to the weathered wooden door. Daniel knocked. Nothing. He pushed gently. The door opened without resistance. Inside, the lighthouse was immaculate. Every brass fitting gleamed. The great lens rotated silently above, scattering ribbons of light across the circular room. At the center stood a single wooden table. Waiting upon it rested 4 steaming cups of tea. Someone had expected them. Footsteps echoed from the spiral staircase. A woman descended carrying another lantern. Her silver hair reflected the morning sunlight pouring through the tall windows. She regarded each visitor with calm curiosity before smiling. You found Station 7. Daniel nodded. We were invited. The woman glanced toward the notebook marked Station 3. Then you've already met one keeper. Rachel exchanged a surprised glance with Claire. So there are more. The woman laughed softly. There have always been more. She introduced herself simply as Mara. Like the keeper beneath Black Ridge, she offered no surname and no history. Instead, she guided them to the top of the lighthouse. The enormous Fresnel lens turned slowly, powered not by electricity, but by a remarkably preserved system of gears and suspended weights. This lighthouse isn't warning ships, Claire observed. No. Mara looked toward the distant horizon. It guides travelers. Daniel frowned. There aren't any boats. There don't need to be. She pointed toward the sea. At first, Daniel saw only waves. Then, as the sunlight shifted, narrow stone pillars became visible beneath the water, stretching toward a distant island hidden by mist. They only appear for a short time each day, Mara explained. The tide hides them. The path, Rachel whispered. Mara nodded. Every station has one. They crossed carefully from pillar to pillar as the sea surged below. Some stones were barely wide enough for a single step. Others had begun to crumble after centuries beneath salt water. Halfway across, Daniel stopped. Behind them, the lighthouse looked strangely different. Its reflection shimmered across the water, not as it stood today, but as it must have appeared generations earlier. Claire noticed it too. It's showing the past. Mara smiled. Places remember. The island beyond the mist was unlike anything they expected. Ancient olive trees twisted across gentle hills. White stone ruins surrounded a circular courtyard open to the sky. At its center stood another bronze atlas, smaller than the one beneath Black Ridge, but unmistakably connected. Its glowing surface displayed dozens of tiny lights scattered across continents. Daniel counted them. There were far more than 7. There are dozens, he whispered. Mara nodded. As far as we know. Rachel looked up. As far as you know? Mara smiled. No one has ever found them all. One light near the eastern edge of the atlas began pulsing. Then another. Soon, tiny points of light awakened one after another across the map. Claire watched in amazement. Someone is activating the stations. Mara looked thoughtful. Or perhaps they're waking because you're finally connected. Daniel studied the glowing network. Every station represented another community of keepers, explorers, historians, and guardians quietly preserving pieces of humanity's shared memory. The Chronicle had never belonged to one mountain or one lighthouse. It stretched across the world. As evening approached, Mara handed Daniel a small wooden box. Inside rested an object unlike the Raven Keys. It was a simple brass compass. Its needle did not point north. Instead, it settled toward whichever station was nearest. When you're ready, Mara said, it will always show the next path. Daniel closed the lid. He understood now that there would never be a final destination. Only another journey, another story, another forgotten place waiting to be remembered. As darkness settled over the sea, The great lantern atop Station 7 illuminated the waves once more. Far across the ocean, tiny lights answered one by one, glowing like distant stars scattered across the horizon. The Chronicle was alive, not because it had been hidden, but because somewhere in the world, there would always be someone willing to keep its light burning for the next traveler who chose to follow it. Black Ridge Files. Chapter 15, The Endless Chronicle. The sea was perfectly calm. From a balcony of Station 7, Daniel Mercer watched the first light of dawn spread across the horizon. One by one, distant stars faded into the pale blue sky, but another constellation slowly appeared, not above, but below. Tiny lanterns, scattered across the coastline, far beyond the reach of ordinary travelers. Claire stepped beside him, holding the brass compass Mara had entrusted to them. It moved again. Daniel looked down. The needle no longer pointed toward Black Ridge, nor did it point toward Station 7. Instead, it settled somewhere far to the northeast, trembling as though responding to another unseen signal. Rachel smiled. I suppose there's another station. Mara overheard and laughed softly. There always is. Before they departed, Mara led them into the oldest room beneath the lighthouse. Unlike the magnificent archive beneath Black Ridge, this chamber was modest. A single stone fireplace, several oak shelves lined with weathered journals, a wooden table scarred by centuries of use. On the wall hung dozens of framed sketches left behind by previous travelers. Some depicted mountains. Others showed deserts, jungles, glaciers, or islands no modern atlas recorded. Every drawing carried one sentence beneath it, so the next traveler will know. Daniel realized that this simple room represented everything the Chronicle stood for. Not glory, not ownership, only continuity. Mara opened an old cabinet and carefully removed a leather-bound volume. Unlike Emily Carter's journal, this one bore no date. She placed it on the table. It belongs to you now. Daniel hesitated. I didn't earn this. You did. I only follow clues. She smiled and left new ones. Inside the journal were hundreds of blank pages. Only the first page contained writing. Every journey begins as someone else's unfinished story. Claire traced the elegant handwriting with her fingertips. Emily Carter had followed someone else's trail. Daniel had followed Emily's. Now someone, somewhere, would eventually follow theirs. The Chronicle never truly ended. It simply passed from one generation to the next. Several days later, they returned to Black Ridge. Life in the valley seemed unchanged. Children rode bicycles through quiet streets. The old diner welcomed its regular customers. The courthouse clock continued marking the passing hours just as it always had. Only Daniel noticed the difference. He no longer looked at ordinary places the same way. Every forgotten building, every abandoned railway, every weathered map might be another beginning. Weeks passed peacefully. No mysterious letters arrived. No hidden doors opened. No coded maps appeared beneath office doors. The adventure seemed complete. Then, one autumn evening, Daniel found a small package waiting on the porch of his cabin. Inside was a smooth river stone painted with a tiny lantern. Nothing else. No return address. No explanation. Claire examined it beneath the light. It's another invitation. Daniel nodded. He didn't need a map. The brass compass had already begun to move. The following morning, the four friends met once more at the edge of town. Adrian Cross carried only a backpack and his notebook. Rachel tucked Emily Carter's journal safely inside a waterproof case. Claire slipped the brass compass into her jacket pocket. Daniel locked the cabin door and smiled. Ready? No one asked where they were going. They already understood. The destination mattered less than the journey. As they disappeared into the forest trail, leading toward the distant mountains, the camera of imagination slowly pulled away. Black Ridge grew smaller beneath the morning mist. Beyond the valley stood the silent mountain protecting its ancient archive. Far beyond that, the lonely lighthouse of Station 7 continued sending its beam across the sea. And beyond even those distant landmarks, countless unseen lights flickered awake across the world. Some shone from forgotten monasteries hidden among snow-covered peaks. Others glowed beneath desert ruins buried by centuries of wind. A few rested inside abandoned observatories overlooking endless plains. Each one guarded another chapter, another memory, another unfinished story. The Chronicle had never belonged to a single place. It belonged to every explorer willing to preserve the past without trying to possess it. Long after Daniel Mercer and his companions had become names in someone else's journal, another traveler would one day discover a weathered map, an old lantern, or a mysterious compass pointing toward the unknown. They would take the first step. They would ask the first question. And somewhere, another keeper would quietly smile, knowing the Chronicle had found its next guardian. Because mysteries are not meant to live forever. They are meant to inspire the next generation to keep searching. The road stretched beyond the horizon, disappearing into morning light. Their figures became smaller with every step until they vanished completely among the trees. Yet the story did not end. Some stories never do. They simply wait for the next page to be written.